Hogstye.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Hogstye. It is Alex Zeese, your host. I've got Jamal, who's driving on the road. I got Steve, who's had some major audio issues. It's been a rough start to this show.
And I had to chase a lizard around my office just now.
Right. Steve had to chase a lizard, which is not a euphemism, folks.
It was a literal lizard.
Right. We have a good show this week. We, of course, have the big schedule release that we're going to talk about a lot. You know, who Washington's playing and when. And then we're going to get into interior O-line, which is, a tough one for us. You know, Steve basically said he goes and talks to Robbie Duncan and says, all right, this is what Robbie thinks.
That's what I do. Yeah, normally that's what I do.
Yeah.
Jamal, but I haven't done that today.
Yes, Jamal's a little better at this than us, so maybe Jamal will have some good insight about guards.
I'm not good at
I'll tell you this right now. I am behind. So if you're looking for if you're looking for insight, I'm in the same boat as y'all two.
We're gonna fake it till we make it
this show.
Week. Yes, this is a fake it till you make it episode, guys. All right. Let us get started, though, with the schedule release, because I think that's the big story of the day. There's two parts to the schedule release. One, the NFL is trying to make the schedule release another thing like the draft. It doesn't work for me. Like, I'm excited to see the schedule as much as anyone else, but I don't need it to be a primetime event.
I can't tell you how much I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate I didn't watch 1 second of their schedule release thing. Because, I mean, sort of being more a general fan of the NFL now, you'd think that would be more up my alley, but I just can't take it. Just release the schedule already.
Yeah. Just hand everyone a sheet of paper and say, here you go. That's all
what they used to do up until however long ago.
I feel like it's been recent.
Yeah.
I will say this. Some of the other teams, what they put out on social media was really funny. I don't know if you guys saw like how Atlanta did theirs.
I love social media. You know that.
Yeah, well, of course. But Atlanta did one of those, what do you call those? It's like a ball rolls down a hill. It knocks a man over, which knocks over some dominoes. And that knocks, like, it's one of those little contraption things.
Okay.
And then, like, as it's going through the whole process, you see the schedule. It was very cute.
I think someone has too much time on their hands.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was also CGI.
Well, I hope so. I hope they didn't roll a literal boulder down a literal hill.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway. Like I was chasing a literal lizard. They need to not roll a literal on the other side of that is don't roll a literal boulder.
Right.
The lizard is safe, by the way. I threw him out the door for those
you did not
lovers
stomp
who are
on
wondering. No.
Also, lizards, if you kill them, it's a mess. You don't want to do that.
I've pulled their tails off more than once trying to catch them. And so, because usually I just try to grab, because I'm gross, and so I just grab it with my hand, but then the tail comes off, and I think it grows back. But this time I was smart,
does it grow back?
I think so, yeah. These are geckos; they're little tiny. It's not like an alligator's running around this house. But this time I grabbed a paper towel and grabbed the body of it, so it didn't pull it. So it was fully safe and sound.
I had a lizard as a pet when I was a kid, and it got in a fight with another lizard, and one of them lost their tail, and it grew back. That's what happens.
Because it doesn't even face it; it just keeps walking.
I don't think they enjoy it, but All right, let's get
probably like the worst 30 seconds of their life, the worst pain for 30 seconds, and it's like, okay,
then it's over.
I've survived.
Yes. Well, it's a flight or fight thing. They choose to run. So, all right, let's talk about the schedule, guys. The last couple years, I think Washington may have had some of the worst schedules given to them by the NFL. Last year was pretty rough. When I say that, look, we know the teams they're playing. It's kind of how they space them out. It's, do you have like a ridiculous like 4 road games in a row kind of thing, or a lot of like short weeks? Last week, I believe Washington had the biggest disadvantage in terms of times off versus their opponent. I remember I was listening to one of those stat nerds on the radio, and he was saying how, it's all right. You're playing on a Thursday. Your opponent played on like Sunday, and then you have a short week, that kind of stuff. Washington had the fewest days off compared to their opponents of any team last year.
Now they're in the middle of that stat.
Yeah.
They're in
now
the
they're
middle
going to be
this year.
Yeah, that's going to be much better this year. But I like how this schedule's spread out. So let's go through it.
All right.
Week 1, Jacksonville Jaguars come to Washington. So you've got 2 stories right off the bat. You got the whole Carson Wentz choking versus the Jaguars last year. We've got Brandon Scherff coming back, which is, going to be a distant second story in terms of the national media. We all know that. But that, that starts out pretty favorably for the team. It's on September 11th, 1:00 game. So I assume they'll do a whole 9/11 thing.
Probably. Everybody has to remember, though, that Jacksonville looks at this as a must-win, like Washington fans would look at this as a must-win, and they're looking for Trevor Lawrence to take a step up, in year 2. So it's, when you got 2 bad teams, and by the way, I mean, just as an aside, this game is going to have, we will know immediately who is Fox's lowest rated broadcast team.
Right.
Because Jacksonville, the 2 least popular teams in the NFL don't get the best,
Well, it's funny you say that, Steve, because I would actually argue the 2 least popular teams in the NFL are playing on week 2. And that's going to be when Washington plays Detroit.
Yeah, sure. Detroit's probably, Detroit's probably lower ranked. I'd say from a ticket sold standpoint, I believe Washington is last, then Detroit, then I don't know where Jacksonville is, but it can't possibly be too much higher than that.
Yeah. Those all. It's just very funny that Washington plays the other 2 bottom feeder teams in terms of popularity right off the bat.
I just mean, Washington fans should not get too comfortable on this, because again, this is a game that Jacksonville's looking at, going, we got to win this game.
Yeah, no question. I think Jacksonville might be a lot better than we think. So.
Well, it depends on Trevor Lawrence.
I was gonna say, it's Trevor Lawrence, but also I think, without getting too technical and anything, but when you have a Doug Peterson coming in to take over a team that actually should have been much better than what their record suggested last year, I think that in itself is a boost. But then you add some pieces around your team, just from the defensive line standpoint or the front 7 standpoint. You got better. I can't remember the exact names because I don't have the roster in front of me, but I know throughout the offseason they were adding some pieces, and then even through the draft as well. But then you add in Christian Kirk for your offense, along with Marvin Jones, who has a ton of experience as a veteran, and Christian Kirk is a rising guy. And then you get Travis Etienne back too. Travis Etienne missed his whole rookie season because he got hurt in preseason or something like that. So I don't think people understand that. Sure, the Jaguars, from a perspective, a national perspective, isn't really the best NFL team, but you got to remember, those are some key components to a team being better than what people perceive them to be, and that's the part that we're overlooking from a Washington standpoint. Is we should beat them because of what their record was last year. Okay, I mean, but they're better, and they got Brandon Scherff too. That offensive line is improving.
Yeah. No question. They put a lot of pieces around Trevor Lawrence this year. You mentioned a couple, but I'll also throw Zay Jones and Evan Ingram now. I mean, that's a good number of weapons for Lawrence to be thrown to. If he can't make a step forward with Kirk and Ingram, who are pretty reliable pass catchers, that's that might be more about him than if they don't make that step forward this year.
Well, I would.
You mentioned Peterson. I didn't even mention that's a huge story too, because you got the whole Peterson Wentz thing.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is it shouldn't be lost on anybody that last year Jacksonville had a disaster at head coach in Urban Meyer. They fired him halfway through the season
after he kicked a guy. Yes.
Yeah, and the guy is, by the way, suing Jacksonville for a workplace. Cause of action now. But, and you never do well when there's an interim coach and all that stuff. So, yes, Jacksonville, as Jamal pointed out, actually does have talent. They are an underperforming team. Doug Peterson is a guy who's had success against Washington in the past with Carson Wentz. If anybody knows Carson Wentz, it's Doug Peterson.
It's
Yeah.
Doug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
he's the key reason why he left Philly. Like, I mean, while Carson Wentz left Philly, it wasn't because of the current staff in Philadelphia. Like Doug Peterson was the reason they moved on from Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
There's some bad blood there, I think, at this point between those two. All right, why don't we move on? Next game, I briefly already mentioned it. On the 18th, it's going to be a 1:00 game at Detroit. This one, I feel a little more confident about, honestly, than I would Jacksonville, because let's be honest, Detroit didn't really make any moves at quarterback. They're still stuck with that huge cap number there that they traded.
I'd rather have Jared Goff than Carson Wentz.
You would?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would. I think that Wentz is a better downfield thrower. So my thing is, you basically took Goff's huge contract for a first-round pick, which, maybe that's smart, maybe not, but they don't really have anything else going on there at quarterback. So, if you're just looking at that aspect, they haven't really improved. So I feel a little better about a game against Detroit.
I mean, if there's one team in the NFL that has as bad mojo as Washington, it's Detroit.
Yeah.
They have bad ownership who can never get it right. They've had a string of bad coaches. They've consistently made bad decisions. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to think about it somewhere. I'd probably take Goff over Wentz, but I think it's a fairly even matchup, sort of generally speaking. And this is up in Detroit, but I mean, having been in Detroit Stadium, I watched the Redskins game there years ago. I don't think, and by the way, Detroit's a dump. If you've never been to Detroit, it's just a horrible place. We've talked about that before.
Yes.
I talked about
that's breaking news.
Well, I think I did mention the Henry Ford Museum in this show one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good museum. But anyway, this game's going to come down to execution more than anything else, because these are mediocre at best teams from a talent perspective. From a coaching perspective, I think you might give a little bit of an edge to Rivera, I guess, on that one. But I think it comes down to what team just executes the game plan better.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Washington's got to win these games. They have to be looking at those as must-win 2-0.
No question about that.
I agree. It is, and that's a second part to the conversation that you're spot on with. It is while Jacksonville has gotten better, and Detroit has actually gotten better too, but they're looking for long-term play. That's part of the reason why you drafted Jameson Williams in the first round. But yeah, to your point, you gotta get better, and getting better is actually playing against teams who are on the rise, but you're beating them. Like, you're supposed to, from a Washington standpoint, these guys are approaching this season as if, like, this is the season where you're going to see a lot of wins. Like, you're going to see a much better team. You're going to see much better cohesion, and all of these things. Like, that's the approach that Washington is having this offseason. I'll never forget, and I'll never stop saying, like, part of their pitch to veteran quarterbacks before they got Carson Wentz, it was like, look, we're just a quarterback away. So I want you to convince yourself to remove that no trade clause to come here. That was to Deshaun Watson. That was to Russell Wilson. Any other top tier veteran that they were looking into that had a no trade clause, and stuff like that. So yeah, to your point, Steve, these are must wins for Washington, especially to get off on a hard start against two up and coming teams, but they're not even established yet. They still have to make their case. So you have to make your case too, especially at home against Jacksonville, and then on the road, y'all said, against Detroit. So yeah, you gotta win.
Yeah. What I'll say about the 2021 Redskins is that, or Washington or whatever. Don't make me say the
Look,
name.
I say Skins. I say Washington. I say
yeah.
Skins.
I mean, I refuse to use.
I don't think.
I'm just not going to use the current stupid name. Anyway, so my point is, I think a hallmark of Washington for several years, especially under Jay Gruden, is that they had a tendency to win games they shouldn't and then lose games they should win. they did that on a fairly regular basis. And Ron Rivera's teams have been slightly more consistent in that regard. I mean, last year, I can't off the top of my head remember a game that they lost that they truly should have won. And then they beat Tampa, so I think that's a more consistent team under Rivera. I don't think Rivera's a great coach. I mean, I think he's a great leader and, yeehaw, all that. But I don't necessarily think he's a great coach in terms of what he produces in the game plans and all of that. So, I mean, I don't know if Rivera's the guy to take Washington to the promised land or anything, but they do tend to win the games they should win, and they probably should win these two games.
He's not a tactician type coach,
No,
which is
this is not Bill Belichick.
No. Belichick's got he's a 99 in every category of coaching. Like that's what Belichick.
Even his press conferences, I find hilarious.
Yeah. Rivera is a great leader. Tactician, he gets a C or something.
Right.
He's very basic in terms of how the play calling and stuff like that. It feels like a lot of times.
When I share your criticism of Scott Turner too, I mean, I think his game plans are pretty basic a lot of times.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on. Week 3, Sunday, the 25th of September, 1:00. Eagles come to town. Carson Wentz's first rematch against his old team. Good Eagles team. They made that big trade for Brown during the draft. That I think can't be overlooked.
Is that the all-time stupidest trade or what? By the way, what in the earth? Not from Baltimore. Not from
Tennessee.
Sorry. Yeah. I mean, what are they doing? Why are they trading him away?
I don't know. Maybe they just can't. They don't think they can afford him. I don't understand it. Yeah. Look, I think the argument I'm hearing these days is there's so many good wide receivers. Why would you pay one? That's
crazy.
Yeah.
That's look, I don't think Jalen Hurts is a particularly good NFL quarterback. He has improved quite a bit from his days at Alabama. At Alabama, I didn't think he was even an NFL quality quarterback.
No.
But he's a little better. But all the same, I just don't think it's going to work out with him as a franchise quarterback. So the thing about Washington Philadelphia games is they always seem to be competitive. Washington has laid eggs many times against the Eagles. So it's just because it's an Eagles team that from a record standpoint wasn't good doesn't mean anything at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we all know that when it comes to the NFC East, everyone's fairly even and they know each other very well. So all these games tend to be toss-ups. I know they got their butts kicked twice by Dallas last year, but the Eagles, the Giants, and the Commanders all kind of, yeah, I know.
The Redskins?
Yeah, yes. You didn't hear the long pause and sigh put in there. Yeah. Anyway, they they're all gonna play each other pretty evenly, historically speaking. Unless one team is just outright outstanding and just you don't see many blowouts between those guys lately. At least it doesn't feel like it, So that one's kind of a toss up to me. So
thoughts?
Yeah. To Alex's point, divisional games are always going to be tricky, but I think so. Wait, hold on. Let me go back let me look at the schedule. So I'll be doing this stuff off memory.
We're talking about the Eagles.
I'm about to say home versus Philly, and then at Dallas. I know we're about to get to Dallas, but home versus Philly and at Dallas. I think one of the things that's going to be tricky when it comes to Philly, is figuring out how much better Washington has got against the run. Now, when you think about how they played in 2021, right? If you look at their statistics, it suggests that they were, okay or good, nothing better than good, nothing worse than good, but they were good against the run defensively. But when you go against teams who prioritize the run over anything else, Philly is one of those teams. And guess what happened when Washington played Philly? They could not stop a nosebleed
in
the run game. And like teams who have that mindset, that physical mindset, and that mentality, like to take over games on the ground. That is something that's going to challenge Washington, and that'll be like probably like, to be honest with you, it's going to be the Jaguars too, to a degree, because based on their moves, they're trying to get better in the run and help Travis or Trevor Lawrence out too. But Philly is going to be the divisional game where it's like, look, you got to face these boys twice a year. you better show up the first time, and you better defend your home, because on the road against Philly, it's going to be that's a reasonable expectation to like understand. You're going to have a different type of atmosphere, but at home you got to stand up ASAP, because that's going to be one of those ones, like if they can control against the ground, you are in trouble. You're going to have a long day.
I mean, I agree with you. The flip side of that, though, is that Washington's coaching staff should know this. They know Jalen Hurts isn't going to be throw 50 passes, go 40 for 50,
Right.
So it's just a matter of, again, it comes down to execution probably more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on. October 2nd, we're in the second month of football season now. Week 4, 1 o'clock at Dallas. This is going to be interesting because I think Dallas has made some moves because of their cap situation that helps Washington, Philly, and New York all get a little more even in terms of, roster talent. Dallas clearly had a better roster last year, top to bottom, than everyone else. But I think they're going to take a step back now, is what we're going to see. So,
I mean,
I'll be very interested in this one.
Look, the truth of the matter is, if you look at the history of Washington-Dallas games in the past 15, 20 years, Dallas usually gets the better of them. Okay?
Sure.
I mean, they've won, don't quote me on this, but something like 75% of these games. Washington at times has gone years without beating Dallas.
Oh yeah, no question.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just never believe that Washington beats Dallas until they actually beat Dallas.
We can count those big wins, unfortunately, because we remember them, and that's not a good sign.
With the former team, this expansion team, of course, there's,
sure.
there isn't really the history of the Redskins is over.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of this game, I mean, going into Dallas, that's a tough road to hoe for Washington. I have to think that Washington's coaching staff is probably rooting for 3-1 in the first quarter of the season.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, isn't that realistically what most coaches try and do? Is when they've split up by quarters, they want to go 3-1 in most every quarter, or 2-2 at the worst.
I'm just talking about being a realist, though. I mean, if I was looking at this as a Washington coach, I would say we got to go 3-1. Maybe they beat Dallas. Odds are they probably won't. So that would be the goal. Would be 3-1, because I think if you go 2-2 to start the season in the quarter, that's the easiest quarter, should be. That's not a good sign.
Sure. All right, let's just keep rolling along here. October 9th, my birthday weekend. We have a 1 o'clock. Tennessee Titans come to DC. We talked about already how they got rid of probably their best, second best offensive weapon, but their best receiver, without question.
I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, still don't. I think we all are kind of in the I don't understand category. So it's going to be interesting seeing what kind of team Tennessee is. Tannehill's a good game managing quarterback. I think we all know that. Malik Willis is going to be, learning behind him. But can Derrick Henry be as explosive with less threats in the passing game, going forward? That's going to be very interesting to see.
I mean, Derrick Henry's a Hall of Famer.
Well, no, I think he's the best running back right now. But Steve, you lose a receiver, people are going to put more in the box. You know what I mean?
It doesn't matter.
You can have 7, 8 in the box. He's gonna take off. He'll find a way to take off.
He'll find a way. That's right. The history of Derrick Henry playing NFL football is that he finds a way. Washington isn't a good run defense, even though they've spent $1 billion first-round picks on all kinds of defensive linemen. Right. So this was another one. I mean, Tennessee's a good team. a very talented team. That this is a tough game for Washington.
Oh, it favors Tennessee still. Don't get me wrong. I think they've been in the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years.
Right.
Yeah, they're a very good team. There were a couple of years there where I think they were Super Bowl favorites and just
but that doesn't mean they shouldn't beat a team like Washington, who's a mediocre team.
Right, no question. I will probably be on vacation or something that weekend. Like I said, that is my birthday, so
do y'all think? Cause we'll talk about it as we get closer to the season, and even on the week of the game. But do y'all think is this like a blowout, or is this like just something that they'll have a hard time playing against in terms of like Derrick Henry and stuff?
I think it'll be a solid win for Tennessee, probably.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think blowout, but I don't think it would be all that competitive a game.
Yeah, I honestly, I'd have to go back and look. Did Tennessee blow a lot of teams out last year? Because I feel like, and this is just a bias, like run first teams generally don't do that.
See, this is normally the time in which I would tell you, but I'm afraid to touch my computer.
Right. So you're on computer B. So
yeah, no, I'm back on computer A, but I'm just afraid to touch this one too.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just didn't pull up Tennessee's last season. I have their depth chart, not their. Yeah, I didn't pull up numbers. All right, let's move on though. October 13th, Washington goes to play Chicago.
The game under no circumstances will I watch.
Yeah, it's a primetime game,
right.
8:15 p.m. on a Thursday, which. Yeah. Oh, and it's on Amazon. That's why Steve won't watch it.
Yeah, I don't do Amazon.
Yeah, Steve does not have Prime, so he will not be watching this one. All right.
I don't like Amazon.
Yeah.
I say, wow, I don't have Prime either. I thought about that when I saw the schedule. Like, how in the hell am I going to watch this game?
You're not.
Yeah. I'm assuming, Jamal, that, the local markets, they'll put it on ABC. So, I guess.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean,
the TV rights, the local teams don't hold regular season TV rights, and so the NFL will have to let them in. They'll only let them if the Amazon contract says they can. So
I don't know what the contract says. I know historically with stuff on ESPN, stuff that was on cable,
that's totally different. That was a part of the ESPN contract.
Oh, sure, I understand that. I'm saying historically they've done things like that for the local markets.
They also didn't have Amazon paying like multiple billions of dollars.
Yeah. Or as Jeff Bezos calls it, a Tuesday. He just has so much.
Okay, so Tennessee, yeah. I dug out my iPad.
Yeah.
So Tennessee, there are times they put up a lot of points. They put up 37 against the Jaguars, 33 against the Seahawks, 34 against the Colts. There's not a lot of blowouts here. They blew the Dolphins out 34-3. They blew the Jaguars out in the second game of that season 20-0, and they blew the Chiefs out 27-3. But most of the other games are pretty close, but they have scored a lot of points.
Okay. So that they could do it, I guess. All right. Well, but we're talking about Chicago at this point. Justin Fields, full-time starter now. I have no idea what to make of him after what he did last year. I know he didn't play the whole season or anything, and it's his rookie season. Everyone kind of gets the big lights in the head and all that stuff. Yeah, Chicago, by this point, both Chicago and Washington could both be rolling or they could both be terrible.
Well, also, remember, this is a Thursday night game.
Yeah.
And Washington is historically horrible on Thursdays. They're just terrible on Thursdays. So I think I wrote a column about this like a year ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through and compared Washington's primetime schedule or results rather.
Right.
Against every other team in the NFL. I think they were last in the NFL. I think it was either last or second to last or third to last. They're horrible in primetime games.
Oh, yeah. I just recently went and looked at everything they've done on Thanksgiving. When there was a rumor that Washington was going to play on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's all in that column.
Yeah. But just looking back at that, like their first multiple decades of playing on Thanksgiving were all losses every time, except for one game versus Detroit. It was just like loss, up until the 2000s. It was terrible.
Oh, they're horrible.
Yeah, and even that 2002 game, they got their butts kicked. Anyway, we'll see what happens with this being a Thursday. Playing a team like Tennessee, who's a bruising team, and then having to go and play Chicago is going to be tough.
Well,
teams back to back like that.
No, I was gonna say I think the good thing about Chicago is that they're in a right now they're in a seemingly worse space than Detroit. You got Justin Fields, but I mean Justin Fields didn't really threaten anybody in his rookie season, and then like outside of that, you're trying to identify what weapons does he have surrounding him, and I think while you're right, like the transition from a physical game to a shortened week can give Chicago an edge in a sense. You'll still have a chance because that offense is going to be predicated around what Justin Fields can do, and if he continues to struggle, especially this early on, week 6, you're still in a good space. They're just trying to find their groove. All teams are, or some teams, with experience, hit the ground running, but they're going to be they're still going to be like trying to find themselves, especially with a new coach and a new scheme that's going to try to work for him. So that's kind of where my head is at. It's an offset. It benefits both teams, the way the schedule works out in this matchup. But we'll see. We'll see. I think Washington will be in good shape.
Yeah, honestly, I'm looking at what ESPN has listed for the depth chart for Chicago. I'm literally like, I don't really know many of these names.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at their roster too, and
David Montgomery.
I don't think that this team has a ton of talent at the ball handling positions.
No, they really don't. It's actually kind of wild. Like you could tell me the only one I kind of remember is Cole Kmet, the tight end.
Oh, Cole Kmet, yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And I just remember when he came out, because it's an unusual name.
It doesn't mean they won't be good, of course.
No. All the great players start out as nobodies, right? I mean, that's kind of the nature of the game.
Well, no, but okay.
Okay, many great players. How about that? Start out as
I would say a few.
Yeah. I would say more than a few. All right, let's talk next week. Green Bay Packers coming to D.C. On October 23rd, 1 o'clock. By the way, I should have just mentioned a lot of 1 o'clock games, which I love. You guys know my history of loving games at 1 o'clock and not playing at night.
Yeah, I said this on IJB a while ago. The NFL sometimes doesn't understand they can give too much of a good thing.
Yep.
Part of why the NFL rose in popularity is because they figured out how to dominate a day.
Yep.
They figure everybody comes home from church if you go do that, and then they watch football for the rest of the day. Now, if you had, and it was a special day, you talked about it all week, you anticipated it all week, you talked with your buddies about it, listen to the radio about it. If you have football on every day of the week, practically, it loses a little bit of its
luster.
Luster. That's the best word. So I think they need to watch it when you have Monday night, Thursday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. It's at some point people get tired of it, and I think if you look at the ratings on Thursday night, that will reflect that.
Oh, no question. And it doesn't help that the Thursday night games generally are sloppy because the guys aren't healthy enough yet.
Well, and that's the one day that, from a competitive balance standpoint, the scheduling gods say everybody has to do one because it's not fair to make just the good teams, play the primetime games. So you're going to get like Jets, Redskins, those kind of games.
Right. Well, Washington's is versus Chicago. That's not a primetime matchup.
No.
That those are two bottom feeder teams right now. All right, let's talk Green Bay. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is going to be the big story that week coming in, especially given that for some reason fans here thought that there was a chance he might leave Green Bay and come here, which was so silly.
People actually think that? Was that like a thing that happened on Twitter or something?
That was definitely a thing that was happening.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you people?
It was Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Deshaun
Right.
Watson. Like, look, trust me, it was a cycle. once one guy shut down, they moved on to the next.
And even when a guy got shut down, they would still be like, but maybe we could still. No.
Yeah.
This game is going to be like a Magic Johnson LA Lakers versus Milwaukee Bucks blowout.
Yeah. I'm not looking forward to that one.
This is going to be a game like 163 to 98. That's this game.
I mean, they could always get
in basketball
lucky.
terms. No, they can't.
Well,
not in this game. They can't.
I was at that one game where the Green Bay Packers came to DC and Donovan McNabb somehow beat them 17-14.
Aaron Rodgers is playing the best football of his career right now, and he's on a mission.
That's true. He is playing the best of his career. We'll see. There is the one thing where, like, a guy like him who's a little odd, he doesn't do the same things like Tom Brady does, it feels like. I get the feeling he will fall off a cliff someday. I think Tom Brady will too, but we'll see when that happens. That's the question. All right, October 30th. I was going
to insert steroid joke here.
Yeah, there's that. All right, October 30th, 4:30 game, Washington at the Indianapolis Colts. Call me crazy. This is the one game I see on the schedule. I'm like, I think Washington has a really good chance of just beating up on the Colts. I have no faith in Matt Ryan. I think the Colts, for whatever you think of Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan was a worse option. So, in my mind, this is a good chance for them because they have a great running back, but that's all they got at this point.
I mean, don't forget that the Colts almost made the playoffs last year. They were 9-8.
Sure.
They were objectively a better team than Washington. That having been said, I agree that Matt Ryan is over the hill at this point, for sure. But it's in Indianapolis. I don't think this is a guaranteed win. I think it's a game that Washington would look at this calendar and say, we need to win this game. But this is another one that I don't think is a guaranteed victory.
Yeah. Look, same. Think about everything, or the main reasons why I said Jacksonville and Philly are tests. It's the same thing with the Indianapolis Colts. They're not going to. They got Matt Ryan from a actual X's and O's standpoint. They got Matt Ryan because of the veteran leadership and the fact that he's seen so many different things over a 10 plus year career. I don't know, like 15-year career. So like it's nothing he hasn't seen before, and he has that veteran leadership and pose and posture to really succeed in Indianapolis. But what does that mean? Like, you can have that offensive line and have that ground game that's going to still be the primary reason for success in Indy. And again, it's not necessarily always about who Matt Ryan isn't anymore, but also what he can. It's more about what he brings as a complement to Jonathan Taylor. And I think that offensive line is suspect in the passing game. I think Indianapolis knows that, but I also think that Matt Ryan, with his quick processing, can offset it. And Jonathan Taylor's run style and that run blocking from the offensive line is what's going to help them stand out. So we'll see. That's going to be a tough game. I think from a motivational standpoint, you would love to see Carson Wentz go in there and, put some respect back on his name in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
But
what rapper are you quoting with that, Jamal?
You heard of that, Ron?
Oh, I have heard of it. I couldn't remember who it is.
That's Birdman. That's Birdman from or what was his name back? Or Baby. Have you ever heard of Baby?
No.
Oh Lord. But yeah, Birdman. He's he made that quote famous. Is put some respect on my name. So yeah, that's kind of what that was. And for Carson Wentz to kind of go through the mud with Indianapolis, that's going to be an important game. I actually think personally, I ain't gonna lie to you. I think the major storylines with Carson Wentz this year is, Jacksonville with Doug Peterson, obviously, and the Colts game. I think those two take priority. I actually don't even like from a macro standpoint. Going to Philly is something in itself, like going back to Philly, but he doesn't have anything to prove with Philly. Like nothing from the coaches, nothing from the players there, like, I mean, maybe some players, I don't know. I don't know the intricacies of that, but Philly is at the bottom tier. It has more to do with Doug, and it has more to do with the Colts management, who he has a lot to prove against.
He's probably super mad at the Colts, would be my
Yeah,
guess.
I would
Oh,
imagine.
I would think so. I mean, the fact that it sounds like it was just some weird petty thing with Irsay that makes no sense.
His fire head will turn even more fiery red.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's talk about the Vikings.
Kirk
Vikings.
Cousins,
Kirk
Minnesota
Cousins.
Kirks.
I believe it's his first time ever coming back to DC since he left here a million years ago. Yeah. And I should mention this will be on November 6th at 1 o'clock, week 9. The Vikings come here. So you got Kirk Cousins. You got that still very good offense of theirs, even after they got rid of Stephon Diggs. They still have a lot of good weapons there for Kirk Cousins.
I'm going to make an intentionally hyperbolic statement here.
All right.
Kirk Cousins is one of the most overpaid players in the history of American sports.
I think that's fair.
From as measured by what he can produce, and I'm not talking about yards. He gets a lot of garbage time yards. From what wins he produces on the field versus the enormous contracts he's had. I mean, I'm sure there's more, but I think he's up there on that list.
He's literally a career 500 quarterback.
Yeah, but that having been said, this is a type of game that he tends to do well in, non-important, non-division game.
Yeah.
So this is another one. I mean, I don't think that if you look at the overall the schedule from the opponent's wins and losses standpoint, Washington's schedule is the easiest in the league. It's number one.
Yeah.
But if you start to look at some of the stuff that Alex mentioned, which is number of days of rest, number of times they're facing teams coming off mini buys. They've even got, I think they've got one where they're coming on the road to Thursday to a primetime game, maybe. They're in the middle of the pack. It's not quite as easy. It's definitely more fair schedule than they've had in recent years, but I don't think it's quite as easy as some people think. And this is the type of game that, again, a dude who can't produce like Cousins tends to produce in mid-tier games.
Yeah. And that you reminded me, that was another thing last year was, like, I think we played 4 teams that were coming off their bye week last season.
They've got them this year too. A couple of them. Sorry, Jamal, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say, I think Kirk is this type of. First off, it's not even just about Kirk. Like, these guys have some weapons on offense. Like, they found a way to make sure that they wanted to keep as much weapons around him as possible. They've done a good job at that. So it's gonna be interesting. The side that's concerning is the defense. Who knows what it's gonna look like? They tried to revamp it this offseason. Who knows what that looks like I said. But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting game, and it's probably gonna be one of the tougher games on the schedule, to be honest with you.
I mean, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Jamal's right. There are a bunch of offensive weapons on this team, and that's just me scanning down a roster real quick, not even studying it.
No, they have a solid roster in terms of weapons. I don't know enough about their O-line to really speak on that, but in terms of offensive firepower, Cousins has guys to throw to at least.
Absolutely.
Which, his last year in DC, he really only had one, and he still produced pretty well here. All right, let's talk about, well, you know what? We already talked about Philly, but week 10, they're at Philadelphia at 8 o'clock on a Monday. 11/14 is the date. I don't know if we need to really get into a lot of depth since we've already talked about the Eagles. But that's the next game is week 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I were Washington's coaching staff, that's the end of the second quarter of the season.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is one that they're going to be lucky to get to 2-2 on. So you got to figure at this point, the coaches are probably looking at somewhere, 5-3 if and on the good end.
Yeah.
And maybe 4-4 on on the bad end.
I was kind of thinking they should be hoping for, being +1 at this point, honestly.
Well, that would be 5-3, because 4-4 would be 0.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right.
So we're talking
Wait, no,
about
we're in week 10 there, aren't we? So it would
Did I
be,
skip
yeah,
one?
Philly,
Oh,
yeah,
I
week
missed
10.
one.
yeah,
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I missed one. But so the Vikings game
5
would
and
be
5. Yeah.
yeah,
You said that's your at best or that's your at worst?
5-3 would be at the week 9 point. I think they would at best 6-3, and at worst 4-5.
Right. So then
Look,
now we're going into week 10.
Yeah,
I think for me, and I'm letting people know this entire off season, I've done it. Like I even remember the last 2 years we did our schedule predictions in
Yeah.
August. Like I'm basing my expectations of this season based on Ron's expectations. So everything that you hear from me and how I see this season playing out is based on Ron's expectations. Is not fully 110% my opinion. If that makes any sense. But with that being said, like when you're talking about reaching that 9-game mark after the Vikings game heading into week 10, I do expect at best you're looking at a 6-3 team. At worst, you're hovering around 4-5. And I don't anything less than that. You are talking about cold
disaster.
red. Cold red. This is a cold red season, a cold red game heading into week 10 for Ron Rivera. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this season, and I'll continue to preach that as we get closer.
It's
Yeah,
not
I
the
think that's
craziest
fair.
thing.
I
It's
think
not the
that's fair.
craziest
That's
thing.
exactly what I just said.
Yeah.
6-3, 4-5.
Yeah.
So I think that's right. I mean, but again, in terms of the Eagles, before we move on, it's another Monday night game. Washington's historically awful on Monday nights. The Eagles in particular, if you go back to the Michael Vick days with the Monday Night Massacre, they've really had some bad performances on Monday night against the Eagles in particular.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to preface this and say that the next 4 games might be the softest point of the schedule for Washington. And we're going to start that week 11. They go down to Houston, Steve, and they take on the Texans, who I don't know what the Texans are up to at this point.
The Texans don't know what the Texans are up to.
Yeah. Who'd they hire again? Lovie Smith?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Who showed up with like the big Santa Claus beard and
Yeah, he looked like he was like Lovey the Mountain Man. He'd been like hiding in the Sierra Nevadas for 3 years.
Exactly. Yes, he came down from over yonder to coach the team again.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game that Washington needs to look at as a win. That having been said, the Texans did get better in the offseason. They got Derek Stingley, who was probably the number 1 corner in the draft. Somehow they ended up with him.
Yeah.
And Davis Mills in year 2. They're looking for him to take a step up. And again, this is, the Texans are going to look at this as a game that they should win. They need to win. So there's that. But yeah, I do think Washington should. I'm not going to go to this game because I'm not wasting the time on the Washington team. But this is a game that they should win.
Well, you'd be wasting your money on the Texans because they're the ones.
Washington gets a piece of it, though. The whole visiting team gets a chunk of it.
Oh, right. They get like 35, 40%.
I think it's 40, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was definitely, Steve, I was thinking about going to the Houston game, but I'm definitely going to the Dallas game. I failed to mention that. I'm going to the Dallas game October 2nd.
Oh, okay.
The Houston one, I wanted to go both because I've never been to Houston itself. So I was like, I'm still thinking about it, but I think what I'm going to do with one of my friends, y'all know Ryan, he wants to go to a Tennessee game this year. So since he's going to make that move with this to Dallas, I'll probably end up sacrificing the Houston trip and just going to a Tennessee game.
Hey, if you make it down to Houston, let me know. I would venture a guess that your nightlife and my nightlife are very different. So I will not do that, but I'll meet you for lunch somewhere, perhaps.
Yeah, we'll probably get in the way these things are. Probably get in on a Friday, and spend the weekend out there. So yeah, that's cool. If we go out there, I'll let you know. But yeah, we'll probably end up doing a Tennessee trip later instead. But if something changed, definitely going out there. But long story short, with Houston, the actual game and the team. Look, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised if they have some sneaky wins this year. This is a team. Well, first off, they're banking on Davis Mills, and off a short sample, it's hard to really project. Like, this could be a boom or bust idea for them to go all in on Davis Mills and try to get a prospect next year. But if this is like a boom for them, they're going to have some sneaky wins, and I wouldn't be surprised if they play well at home. Let's put it that way.
All right, let's talk about the next one up, and that is the Atlanta Falcons coming to DC. We're now towards the end of November, the 27th, 1 o'clock, Atlanta. Another team that, you kind of have to look at and say they're like just blowing it up and going into rebuild mold after getting rid of Matt Ryan.
Atlanta sucks.
Yeah, yes, they suck. They have the ugliest uniforms. And not that anyone else cares
about that. Uniforms are so overrated.
Well,
Who cares what they look like?
Listen, they don't suck no more. They got my boy Drake London.
They
probably go 17-0. I wouldn't be surprised.
He was my number one receiver in the draft. I mean, he was my number one.
That's true. They did get Drake London, but who's throwing to him? I got
you and me, Alex. That's who's throwing.
I'm about to say that's all you need. Just throw it.
Oh, that's right. They got Mariota and Ritter now.
Yeah,
they got Mariota. They got Marcus Mariota, and then Ritter's probably gonna. By this point, Ritter will probably be playing. Is my guess. Towards the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Regardless, this is a game where a Washington coach, would say we have to win this game. Atlanta at home, there's no way we can lose this.
If you're redlining, this is a red line, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. You know what? We got 2 games basically back to back with New York.
Why does the NFL do this?
This is the second year they've done it now.
I know. I don't get it.
They used to never do this. It used to be you always tried to put like a 3-game, 2-game gap or something.
I mean, I realize it's a huge calculus problem to make this work out. But regardless. I mean, the Giants aren't a good team either. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be what they hoped.
No.
That having been said, division games are always tough. Washington has underperformed horribly against the Giants at times.
Right.
So a lot of times these Washington Giants games are very close affairs, and I don't think Washington should win these 2 games, but I don't think you can just throw that out there as guarantees just because the nature of the NFC East does not provide for that normally.
Right. In a way, Washington has an advantage here, though, and I'll put it this way. So just so the fans have a context here, Week 13, Washington goes to New York. This is the first week of December. And then they have a bye. And then Week 15, the Giants are going to be playing Washington. We don't know the date and time yet because now we're in that whole flex schedule period. So, that's a little up in the air. But New York has to play Philly in between. Washington gets some time off. Washington basically just has to scout New York for 3 weeks. That does help Washington a little. If they don't win that at home, that's a big problem, honestly. Now, there's a lot of factors in that, but
SWEEP. It's a wrap. Sweep.
Okay.
I don't have no respect for the Giants. I respect Daboll as a head coach. But listen, man, they are not in the same space as Washington. And I think what was stopping Washington over these past few years was the fact that they just couldn't get over the giant hump, like the literal New York Giant hump. It was always some fluke reasons for how Washington was losing, bad quarterbacks, injuries, all these other things, or fluke plays that helped New York win. They are not better than Washington. And I think getting over that hump last year, regardless of their circumstances, it was the confidence that Washington needed to kind of eliminate all that fluke stuff. Sweep. I'm not that confident against the Eagles in Dallas. I'm confident against the Giants. SWEEP. And when we get off this bye week and get into that next game, I'm gonna say the same thing when we talk about Giants at home. Sweep.
Okay.
I'm with you. All right. Week 16, San Francisco 49ers, 4 o'clock. This is Christmas Eve game. So, for those of you who, mark that kind of stuff down, no, we're not playing on Christmas. We're not playing on Thanksgiving this year. Although Christmas Eve night game, I got to figure that's also going to be kind of like lowly
it's not a
viewed
night
game.
game. It's a
Well,
late afternoon game.
Late afternoon game. Most people are doing stuff with their families on Christmas Eve too.
Yeah, I love watching this game
yeah.
most likely.
Yeah. All right. So 24th there, San Francisco.
I think that's as close to a guaranteed loss as you have.
I would think so. Honestly, who knows who San Francisco's going to be?
6-hour plane ride to the other West Coast on Christmas Eve. Play facing a better team, even though they were only 10-7 last year, but I think they're a way better team. Yeah, this one is a loss.
They're a very good team. I don't know who their quarterback's going to be at this point. Like that's kind of the wild card with them is.
If that were me, I would never have drafted Trey Lance in round 1.
Right.
And I would have Jimmy G or someone else.
Yeah. You know who their third stringer is right now? It's old Nate Sudfeld.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just pulled up their roster and saw that. That's fun. He was a fun guy to talk to.
Fast becoming the next Chase Daniels.
Yeah, right. He just keeps on going. Yeah, look, San Francisco is just a better team. They are. They have better coaches. They're a better team. The only thing you don't know about is health at this point. So maybe Washington could get lucky because of something like that. But
yeah, true. But it's just bad circumstances.
Yeah. Jamal, any thoughts, or do you want to just keep on rolling?
San Fran is. I mean, look, that's again another tough. Look, there's themes here. One of the things this is a run predicated offense, and they're playing everything that run. And it's going to be a huge test. San Fran last year was a couple plays away from being NFC champions. And regardless of who's at quarterback, which I think would ultimately be Jimmy G, based on how things are moving now, it's probably it's going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah, it will. All right, week 17, Washington plays Cleveland, and dirty old quarterback
Deshaun.
of theirs, dirty Deshaun. Thank you. So we'll see how that one goes, but I'm guessing he's playing at this point. The NFL doesn't seem to have any.
NFL is shameful and ought to be embarrassed about how they've handled the Deshaun Watson situation, but that's another story.
That's a whole nother thing. Yeah.
I've already railed on and on about it on IJP multiple times.
Yeah, and on here we've railed on it.
True.
So I'm going to say Cleveland's probably going to be favored pretty heavily here if Watson's playing. Just my guess. Cleveland keeps on building like they're going to be a playoff or bust team the last couple of years, and so far it's kind of been bust, but now they got a different quarterback.
Well, they're another, Washington, Detroit snake bit team.
Yeah, although they are much less snake bit than the others these days.
But they've drafted a ton of quarterbacks, brought in a ton of talent. They still don't win anything.
Yeah.
So should Cleveland be favored? Yes, but I also think you should never count a loss when you're playing the Cleveland Browns.
No, but I mean, they brought in Cooper.
I hear you, but it's still Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm just saying they've got a pretty good roster.
I like their team.
I do too, but it's Cleveland.
Yeah.
That is also...
and I understand what you're saying. It's like we could make 20 arguments and Steve will just say, but it's Cleveland.
And I'd be right. They've had good rosters before, but it's Cleveland.
I'm going to say that collapses just like Washington. So I completely agree. Cleveland is Cleveland, just like Washington is Washington. I'm thinking of other teams. Atlanta,
Detroit.
Same boat. Detroit, that was just so, they got so unlucky last year. Side note, them playing so good to beat the Baltimore Ravens, and Justin Tucker hits a 67-yard field goal to beat these guys. I couldn't even believe it. I could not believe it.
It's because it's Cleveland.
Yeah.
And by the way, the city of Cleveland is the home to a travesty of justice known as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is just anything but a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at this point.
They put in everything,
And they have way too many artists in there from way too many different genres. They put Dolly Parton in, for Christ's sake.
No. She said no. She didn't.
No, but I think she got elected anyway. I think she won the vote, I believe.
Oh, did she?
I think so. And that's just crazy. So
even when a country star says, I'm not a rock and roll person, don't put me in, they still did it. That's
Call
absurd.
it the Popular Music Hall of Fame and I'll be fine.
Yeah. I'm with you. All right.
Anyway, sorry.
Last
Distraction.
game. Yeah, last game we got Dallas Week 18. No scheduled time or date on that because of the flex.
That's because they're waiting to see if either Dallas or Washington is in contention for the division title.
Right. Because look, if one of them's good and you put it on prime time, it's going to get good ratings. That's just the history of it.
By the way, just as a totally random note, I was having audio problems before we came on, and so at one point I plugged my headphones into my cell phone to see if it worked. I randomly opened any YouTube video, and the video I opened said, "I'm Todd the toothbrush." I don't know what in the world. I just noticed I was closing Windows on the phone when you were talking, and I just noticed that was whatever video I clicked. That was what I clicked somehow. I don't know what that means or what that says about my YouTube search history, but
I honestly don't know what it says about your search history.
I don't even. I listened to about 3 seconds of it. That was it. So I don't know what it was.
All right.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So finishing up against the Cowboys. We already talked about them. I don't really know if we want to add anything else.
No, I'm done.
Yeah, I think going through the schedule is always a grueling task on this show. It takes way longer than it should.
And we'll do our game by game predictions at the when we get closer to the season.
Right.
Assuming I'm still around.
We do that just after preseason.
Yeah. But I think generally speaking, this is like a 9-8 sort of season. 9-8, anywhere between 10-7 and 7-10.
Yeah. Well, that's also who the team is, so that doesn't help. All right, Jamal, I know you said you have to go, so we do have Steve and I can just do the inside O-line stuff, because it's going to probably take more than the few minutes you have until you had to.
I only have
jump
a few
off.
minutes too, Alex.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so maybe
I have to hit the road.
Double up next week.
No, let's just whiz through it real fast, Alex. I mean, it's
okay. All right, I will do a speed round. We're just doing inside O-line.
I don't want to get behind on our calendar.
Yeah. All right.
All right, then I'll go ahead and bounce out. Y'all be safe, fellas.
Okay. Later. All right. Inside O-line. Let's start with the centers. Chase Roullier coming off injury. He's going to probably be your starter. But last year, Ishmael played. He performed very well. He's coming back. They also have Tyler Larson and John Toth. Was John Toth here last year? I don't remember.
Yeah, he was on the practice squad. They're weirdly stacked at center, which I find a bit odd.
Yeah, because honestly, Larson and Ishmael both played and were pretty
well.
Good.
Yeah, pretty well. And Roullier is the big dollar, so he's going to be the starter no matter what.
Right. Well, and look, he might be one of the best. He's quietly one of the best centers in the league, in my opinion.
Certainly, I don't know how to measure them, and I think, as I've said many times, the PFF grades are stupid. So I don't follow those. But yeah, he's certainly one of the better ones.
Yeah. The more interesting discussion, which we will get to quickly, is who's going to play guard, because they've gotten rid of both starters from last year, and now we have Andrew Norwell, Wes Schweitzer, and Trey Turner, all very veteran-y, like older guys coming in on fairly cheap deals. Schweitzer's been here, obviously, as a backup / starter his first year, and I think he was basically the backup all last season.
Right.
But he's a very high-quality backup. I would be very comfortable with any of these guys starting. It's really just a competition to see who gets what spot in the end.
I think people need to remember this is not 5-time Pro Bowler, All-Pro Trey Turner. This is Trey Turner in 2022.
Right.
And I'm not going to pretend like I've studied Trey Turner's film. I haven't at all. But what I have read about him, take it for what you will, is that he has lost some of his athleticism, his ability to move. He's more of a Eric Flowers phone book guy now, which isn't the Trey Turner that won all those awards or, went to repeated All-Pro teams. So remember that. I did finally find his contract. He's got a $1.45 million cap hit this year, which is the size of a guarantee, the amount of guarantee he got. So that's Trey Turner. Andrew Norwell, the Eric Flowers replacement, I guess.
Yeah.
Solid player. Is he a great player? Probably not. No. But he's certainly a solid player. And then Wes Schweitzer, I don't know.
They're all just good, solid guys. They're not. The team is kind of taking this approach of get veteran guards in here, don't overpay them, but you can. Any of those guys starts, you at least trust them to hold their own.
And it could go pretty well.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, some of these old guys could get hurt or not play well.
Sure.
I think it has a pretty wide range of potential performance.
Right.
Here this
Right.
year. Like you knew Brandon Scherff was pretty. If he was going to be out there, was obviously a high quality guy.
Mm-hmm.
These guys aren't quite at that level, but they're not awful. But they could also get hurt. Like Trey Turner has an injury history.
See, I put them all around the same level as an Eric Flowers, honestly.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
They're good. They're not great. And just to go over the backups here, we got a couple guys. We got Zach Bailey, who's
practice squatter.
Yeah, practice squatter. All these backups, by the way, have been in the league either 3 seasons or less. So Bo Ben-Schwazel, whose name I think we've never really gotten right.
No.
He's been in and out for a while. Dion Calhoun, Nolan Laufenberg.
I heard good things about Nolan Laufenberg coming out of
Air Force.
No, coming out of the rookie, the last whatever they had an OTA right recently.
Well, they had the rookie camp thing.
Yeah, he wasn't. Yeah, that was there. I heard some good things about Laufenberg.
Yeah. I think he even though he's been here a year, I think because he was a practice squatter, they still let him do rookie camps.
Yeah, that's probably right. But I heard some good things about him. But go ahead.
All right, and then last guy is the one they just drafted, Chris Paul, from Tulsa. So
we'll see.
Yeah. When you talk about these guys, wait, is Trey Turner only 28? It feels like he has to be older than that.
He's been around forever. I don't want to open my window to find out.
Yeah. I might double check that on myself, but they're all. It's interesting. You have like the older guys who are all in their like 30s, or early 30s, late 20s, and you have a bunch of very young guys. So,
you have as close to a roster lock as you will ever see in the NFL between Norwell, Turner, and Schweitzer.
Oh yeah, all 3 of those guys I assume are making the roster.
Absent injury or something really strange, those guys are roster locks.
But you do have an interesting fight between who gets what job, who's the starters, and who's going to be the backup, and then those younger guys. It's 5 guys probably all fighting for one spot.
Well, you got 6 because I think Keith Ishmael is going to make it too because he did pretty well, and so I think Rouillet, Larson, Ishmael, Norwell, Turner, Schweitzer all in. That's 6. They've only kept 4 tackles, so they're going to keep at least one more. So probably one more of those guys, the guy who can of the nobodies of the no names that you read out, I think one more of those guys who can prove to be the most versatile will probably make the active roster. I have no idea who that would be, but
yeah, I mean, look, that's totally up in the air is who wins it, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys for one spot.
Right,
that's what we're basically talking about.
But that's my guess is because if they keep 4 tackles, I think they'll probably go 11. Offensive linemen at least, and so then that's 6 plus 1.
Yeah, I mean 10 and 11 tend to be what the number is. It's either 10 or 11. So
I just think there's risk and there's old guys, and I think they'll keep and Ron likes versatility,
right?
And so I think they'll keep an extra guy who proves he can kind of do anything.
Well, and honestly, if they're keeping 2 backup centers like that,
but Ishmael was a guard and a center, right?
Yeah. Same with Larson. I think you could use them at. Both of them can play any spot.
In a pinch, at least, yeah.
Yeah. And, honestly, Ishmael's a young guy. Chase Rouillet is 28 now. But, you don't want to keep too many older guys. That's the one thing that you got to watch out for.
No, but they're stuck financially.
Yeah, I know. All right, so that should quickly do O-line. Interior O-line is done. Exterior O-line's done. It was like a Band-Aid. We pulled it off as fast as we could.
I would tell you what's next week, but I don't want to open my schedule document to find out.
I think it's a defensive thing. I don't remember.
I don't know. So it'll be a mystery.
Yeah, surprise thing. Steve, text it to me so I can at least read.
I will.
All right, guys. That should take care of this week's show. Hope you all have a good week. See you later.
I'm on the road to San Antonio.
Have fun with that. That's actually a nice drive. Houston to San Antonio.
No, it isn't.
It's flat.
All right. Bye.
Bye.